What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 16 top 15 tight end rankings, helping you guys fill that tight end spot for the fantasy football playoffs. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe. But let's just dive right into the rankings here, and I'm going to be starting off in Tier 1. And I think at this point, over the last few weeks, there's been one tight end that has kind of separated himself from the rest of the pack, and that guy is Trey McBride here, going up against the Panthers. In McBride's last 4 games, despite not catching a receiving touchdown over the entire season, he is still averaging in his last 4 19.7 points per game. He has been targeted 51 total times in the last 4 games. And on top of that, the Cardinals have a really nice matchup this week. They are top 6 in implied points. So Trey McBride's been balling. At some point, you're just hoping this dude can find his way into the end zone. But even if he doesn't, he is still putting up fantastic production and has the matchup to go along with it. Now, looking at Tier 2, I have 3 guys in this tier. We have George Kittle going up against the Dolphins. Hasn't been great over the last 3 weeks, but he has still been pretty consistent. 10 plus points in 10 of his 12 games. I believe one of the ones where he was under that was week 1, so pretty much like 10 of his last 11. And he has scored 20 or more points in half of his games this season. I know Brock's kind of struggled as of late, but I still think Kittle is a top tier option. And then in that same matchup with the Niners and the Dolphins, I have Jonnu Smith going up against the 49ers. In his last 5 games, he's averaging 21.3 points per game on 9 targets per game. If you wanted to pitch me that Jonnu Smith should be leading this tier or potentially the tight end one heading into the week, I don't think I would push back super hard. The dude's been an absolute monster. Not a great matchup against the 49ers, but Jonnu Smith, still a high-end tight end one play. And then we're going to be wrapping up this tier with Brock Bowers going up against the Jaguars. Now, I would hope that Aiden O'Connell is going to be back for this one. Seems like that, could be trending in that direction. That would be ideal, in my opinion, for Brock Bowers. He's actually kind of struggled as of late, under 10 PPR points in 3 of his last 4, but the Raiders actually have a respectable implied point total this week, up at 20.5, going up against a very soft Jaguars defense. So I do think this could be a spot where we see a bounce back from Brock Bowers. And still, you look at his entire sample size on the season, he has still been a top-tier tight end. I still like him as a top 4 play. Now, moving into Tier 3, you're going to start off with Sam Laporta going up against the Bears here. He has scored at least 10 points in each of his last 3 games. Week 15, he actually set season highs in receptions, targets, yards, and fantasy points. So a great overall game. I think with the David Montgomery injury, you're kind of hoping this Lions offense goes a little bit more pass heavy. That would obviously favor a guy like Sam Laporta. Maybe he kind of gets bumped up to pecking order in terms of like the top weapons on this offense. After Laporta, going to go with Mark Andrews going up against the Steelers here. He is 100% touchdown dependent, but he's become someone who is getting into the end zone very consistently. He has 7 games this year with touchdowns. He has 7 games with 10 plus points. So when he's getting into the end zone, which he has done as of late, he is going to be a nice option in your fantasy football lineup. After Andrews, I'm going to go with David Njoku to close out Tier 3 here, going up against the Bengals. On paper, a solid matchup, a team they can put up points against. I will say, though, not having Jameis at quarterback is kind of a buzzkill here. They're going to go with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And the tough thing here with DTR is that he kind of has a lot of the downsides of Jameis, where the turnovers are going to be there. They don't have a super high offensive ceiling in terms of their point total. But now you factor in the idea that he's not just going to be funneling a million targets to these guys like Jameis Winston was. Jameis might throw 3 picks, but even in a game where he throws 3 picks, David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy, they're going to be getting 10 plus targets a game. That's probably just not as likely to happen here with DTR at quarterback. So I don't love that. Njoku also missed week 15 with a hamstring, so he might not be 100% going into this one. Obviously, we'll have to monitor his injury, but I do think he has to take a hit here. If this was Jameis and David Njoku was good to go, he would be in Tier 2 with Kittle, Jonnu Smith, Brock Bowers, but we have to reevaluate with the unfortunate quarterback change. Now, moving into Tier 4, I'm going to start off with Travis Kelce going up against the Texans. Now, his ranking is pretty dependent on whether or not Patrick Mahomes plays. When it looked like Mahomes maybe wasn't trending towards playing, I had Kelce at the bottom of this tier. Now that it looks like Mahomes is going to try to give it a go, I have Travis Kelce to the top of this tier. Even with Mahomes healthy, Kelce has been underwhelming, under 14 PPR points in each of his last 5 games. He only has 2 total touchdowns on the season, but I do think with Mahomes at quarterback, a little bit of a better situation offensively, which would lead Travis Kelce to be my tight end 8. After Kelce, going to go with Tucker Kraft going up against the Saints. Tucker Kraft, kind of similar to Laporta, is pretty close to touchdown or bust. He is third in touchdowns at the tight end position. Packers are going to put up points in this matchup. They have the second highest implied point total. So I like Tucker Kraft as my tight end 9. And then closing out this tier with TJ Hawkinson going up against the Seahawks. He's been somewhat disappointing since returning from injury, 9.6 points per game. His usage has been getting better, a solid target number in week 15, 81% route participation. I would not be surprised if he has a couple of nice games to close out the fantasy season. Now, looking at the fifth and final tier, I'm going to start off with Hunter Henry going up against the Bills. In games where Drake May has started and played the whole game, he's averaging 11 PPR points. Not overly high on this Patriots offense, but I will point out that the Bills have given up 40 back-to-back weeks. Obviously, completely different calibers of offense with the Rams and the Lions, but like maybe the Patriots can put up a respectable point total here against the struggling Bills defense. Then I have Brenton Strange going up against the Raiders, the tight end replacement for Evan Ingram. He went out week 15, was targeted 12 times, caught 11 of them for 73 yards. Week 15 was definitely the best we've seen in terms of Mac Jones just supporting these weapons. Brian Thomas Jr. had a big day. Obviously, getting Brenton Strange to 11 for 73 is impressive. Not overly scared of this Raiders defense here. So I think out of nowhere, he's kind of positioned himself to be like a desperate play if you're struggling at the tight end position. And then a few more guys here. We have Pat Freiermuth going up against the Ravens. Has logged 3 nice performances, 18.8, 13.8, and 11.2 points. I guess the issue here with Freiermuth is he's been pretty touchdown dependent during that stretch. I believe he's had a touchdown in all 3 of those games. Not a great matchup here. The Steelers only have 19 implied points this week, so that's not ideal. Could he continue to get into the end zone? Sure, but especially if they're getting a guy like George Pickens back, could be a spot where Pat Freiermuth kind of comes back down to earth. My tight end 14 is going to be Dalton Kincaid going up against the Patriots. He finally returned from injury and actually had a pretty decent week 15, was targeted 7 times, caught 4 of them for 53. Overall, this season's been pretty disappointing for Dalton Kincaid, but I think at this point, he's pretty much someone who's going to have a fine role on a very good offense, and you're just kind of hoping he can get into the end zone. At this point, pretty close to touchdown or bust. And then the final guy in this tier and the final guy in my top 15, Cade Otton going up against the Cowboys. Cade Otton has been kind of a tough call for me. There are just certain players where you seemingly like misrank almost every single week where it's like you're kind of slow on the uptake and then they start to fall back down to earth. You keep them too high. Cade Otton has been one of those guys for me this year. Obviously, early on in the season, didn't do a ton, but once you had the injuries to Evans and Godwin, a lot of people jumped right on board like, all right, Cade Otton's going to step up. He's going to be a stud. I was a little bit hesitant to just like launch him up my rankings, but in games with no Evans and Godwin, he was putting up monster numbers. Then when we were getting Mike Evans back, I'm thinking like targets are earned, they're not given. If he's producing even without those dudes, he should still have a solid role when one of them is back. So I continued to rank him fairly highly. Obviously, I docked him a little bit because he was no longer the number 1 target, but he's just been super underwhelming with Mike Evans back, has seemingly just like regressed back into his previous role, even maybe like lesser production. In the 4 games with Evans back, he has put up 4, 6, 10, and 4.4 points. I will say the Buccaneers have the 5th highest implied point total, so maybe there's some touchdown upside, but really tough to trust Cade Otton with his recent performances. And I guess I'll just shout out an honorable mention to Kyle Pitts. I would not feel comfortable starting Kyle Pitts, but maybe this quarterback shakeup, Michael Penix coming in, maybe that kind of sparks something here with this Falcons offense, which could benefit a guy like Kyle Pitts, whose production has just completely tanked over the second half of the season. But that is going to wrap it up for my top 15. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Check out my running back, wide receiver rankings, quarterbacks. I'll have defenses coming out later today. But thank you all again, and I will see you in the next one.